Welcome back to our course on Excel 2013 Advanced. In this section we're going to take a look at the relatively small group of logical functions. There may not be too many of them, but they are extremely important because once you get beyond the very simplest workbooks in Excel, it's very often the case that a calculation you have to do or a particular action you need to perform is dependent on something else. And very often it's dependent on a combination of things. So logical functions like if and if-na, which are basically conditional functions, and then other functions such as and or that can combine conditions together, become extremely important. In the previous section we looked at this workbook, and on sheet 1 we were creating an invoice specifying a part number here, 25189 in cell C7, and then using VLOOKUP functions here and here to get the description and the price from the catalogue, which is actually a named area on the catalogue worksheet within the same workbook. And the problem we found is that if we fill down here, we get NA wherever we're dealing with a part where we haven't entered a number. So that looks pretty horrible on the sheet there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to replace the original lookup. So let me just undo the fill down and let's look back at this lookup. Now this lookup says equals VLOOKUP, and then it's got C7, that's the part number, parts catalogue, that's the named range that defines our parts catalogue, 2 is the number of the column within that named range, and then false means we're looking for an exact match of the part number. Now what I'm going to do is to replace that formula, and I'm going to replace it by putting immediately after the equals sign if na. If you look at the screen tip there for if na, returns the value you specify if the expression resolves to na, otherwise it returns the result of the expression. So what this is saying is, if in the field where I'm going to put this formula I'm looking at something, this is the thing defined by VLOOKUP, and it comes out as NA, I'm not going to show NA, I'm going to show something else. So it says let's calculate VLOOKUP, and if the result of that is NA, what am I going to display? Well, I'm just going to display a space, literally a space character. So what my use of that function means is do the VLOOKUP, if the answer's NA, put a space. If it's not NA, actually put the result of that VLOOKUP if it's not NA. So let's try that in the cell where it actually occurs. Of course we get the same answer that we got before. Now let's do that fill down. Control D. Now it appears that nothing happened because we've just got empty cells still, but if I click in those cells you'll see that my fill down has happened, but you'll also see that I've got empty cells, so it looks much neater than it did before. Let's do the same thing with the unit price cell. So again, in there we're going to put if it's an NA, what we want to appear in the cell is a space. If it's anything else, then the VLOOKUP is what will appear. Okay, that still seems to work all right. Let's fill that down. And again we've got a line of spaces. So let's see if that works okay if I put another part number in. There we are, it's absolutely fine. Now let's take a look at the if function itself. This works in a similar kind of way. The difference is that with the if function you specify a condition, and if the condition is true, one thing happens. If the condition isn't true, another thing happens. Now the condition we're going to use here relates to discounts on pricing within our orders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this invoice a little bit, and I'm going to put a discount percentage in between columns G and H. And then I'm also going to put a column in for the discounted price. So the basis on which we're going to calculate the discount is this. We're going to say that generally speaking everybody gets a 10% discount at the moment. But we're doing a special at the moment, and our special involves giving you a 20% discount on door handles, but only door handles. Now we're going to assume for the purposes of this exercise that you can recognize that something is a door handle because the description will start with door handle. Now notice the ones there have got door handles with an S, but anything with door handle at the beginning will get a 20% discount. So what we have to do in this case in cell H7 is to insert an if statement, and the if statement is going to check whether we're dealing with door handles or not. So when you enter an if function, it is if, and there are basically three arguments. The first argument is the test that you're going to perform. The second argument is what you're going to do if the test is true, and the third argument is what to do if the test is false. Our test is going to be, is the item a door handle? And if it's true, if the answer to that test is yes, then we're going to put 0.2, that's 20%, into the cell, and if it isn't, we're going to put 10%. So in fact the second and third arguments are easy. The second argument is 0.2 and the third argument is 0.1. So they're the easy part. Now what's this test? Well, the test is to say that if I look at cell D7, does it say that we're dealing with door handles? Now I'm going to assume that if the part the customer has ordered is a door handle, the description will begin with door handle. You can't actually in an if statement in Excel 2013 in a straightforward way do some sort of like comparison. You can't say is the description like door handle something. But door handle is 11 characters, and the test I'm going to make is this. Are the leftmost 11 characters of that description door handle? So what I'm going to say is if left, function we saw before, D7, comma 11. So if the leftmost 11 characters of D7 equal, and then I'm going to put door handle, that is my test. So if the leftmost 11 characters of D7 are door handle, 20% discount. If the leftmost 11 characters of D7 are not door handle, 10% discount. So let's try that, and lo and behold, for this first one we get 20%. Now let's put a different part number in here. Let's try 23045. That part is, that's actually masonry screws. Let's do a fill down now. And there we are. As you can see, we're now getting a discount of 0.1 for masonry screws, 0.2 for the two types of door handle. Now let's suppose that I want to give an even better discount offer to my clients. I'm going to say we're giving 20% discount on door handles and masonry screws at the moment. So all three of these items would actually get a 20% discount. So the test we need to do is if the description either begins with door handle or it begins with masonry screw, give a 20% discount. Anything else, 10%. To put in multiple conditions, you can use the OR function or the AND function, and in this case either door handles or masonry screws will get a 20% discount. So in the if function there, within the if function, what we're going to do is to nest an OR function. So we put OR, and we separate the different conditions that would make that OR statement true by commas. So we say left D711 equals door handle, next condition left D7, comma. Now masonry screws, we're talking about 13 characters. And what we're checking there is equals masonry screw. Close that. Let's try that on that one. Do a fill down. There we are. Now let's put in a part which is not a door handle or a masonry screw. Fill down. That's it. So we're giving 20% discounts on door handles and masonry screws at the moment. Now, two of the functions I mentioned there were and or. If you strung two or more conditions together with and, they would all have to be true. Two or more conditions with or, then any one of them would have to be true. But you also have other functions that you can use, such as the not function and the exclusive or function. Let's have a look at the not function. Let's suppose that I decided that in fact what I was going to do was to give 20% discount on everything except door handles and masonry screws. What I would do is to test any particular item and say, is it a door handle or a masonry screw? If it is, you only get 10%, everything else you get 20%. Now to do that using functions here, I would actually embed the or that I've already got in a not statement. So I'd put braces around the whole thing and employ the not function. See what that does. Basically that changes the discount on the door handle here to 10%. And then if I fill that down, the only one of those that should get 20% discount now is the one that isn't a masonry screw or a door handle. So that's the last one. Fill down. And there we are. We give 20% discount on everything except door handles and masonry screws now. Now what I'd like you to do, as really quite a tricky exercise this one, is to finish off some of the detail of this invoice. I've saved it as example 8 in the supplied files, and my answer to the exercise I'm going to set you now is example 9. And this is what I want you to do. First of all, let's see what happens if I fill down the discount column. Now that's pretty much the problem we had quite a while ago, where we just needed to put in a test to make sure that we weren't calculating here for a non-existent part, which of course we are. But we can't use the if NA function here because we're not getting an NA value anywhere in the existing entries on that row. This discount does not come from the catalogue. It's calculated on the basis of this if statement. Now there are a number of ways of getting around this. One of them is simply to say, well, if I look at the description or the part number and it's empty, then I don't want to put anything for the discount. If it's not empty, I've got the if statement there that I need to use to actually work out what the discount is. So let's try that out on this particular entry here. So instead of the equals if here, I'm going to put equals if in a big if statement. What are we testing? We're testing to see if D11 equals a space. If it is, then I want this to be empty as well. If it isn't, I want this to say if, etc. So I want it to actually have this if statement as its contents. Let's see what we get then. Now we do get a warning about this statement being different from the ones around it, but it does basically work. Let's try putting a part number in here. And it does actually do the calculation correctly, so that's absolutely fine. Now there are one or two ways that you could improve that, but that's basically the approach that you need to take. So having shown you how to do that, what I'd like you to do now is to work out a formula for discounted price that can go into cell I7 and be filled right down to the bottom, and that'll work in all cases. And having done that, I want you to work out a formula for total price, and having done that, a grand total at the bottom. You don't have to worry about varying the number of rows in an order. The maximum number of rows is 8, and of course anything from 1 to 8 of those may actually have values in. Don't forget to incorporate the quantity. Note that I've changed the formatting of the discount column here to percentage, but the number that's stored is still a decimal number in the range 0 to 1, so it still holds 0.1. The percentage display there is only how it's displayed. It's nothing to do with the number that's stored. That's it for this section. I'll see you in the next section.